Okay, so your last option, so remember you are all doing the graphite option for your first option or for your first fruit, your first still life of the inanimate non-moving object. So we did everything in graphite first, but if you decide to pick pop art as your second option, I wanted to go over some examples and what you could do with that. So in this example, I had students originally break up their composition into 6 different sections. But for this week, we're just going to break it up into 4 different sections, and I'll show you how to do that. Now, it's up to you if you want to use marker, if you want to use colored pencil, crayon, etc. But one thing about the the graphic approach to Andy Warhol's work, which was a pop-up artist, you wanted to make sure the color looks flat. So in his work, he did screen printing. For our example, we use markers. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Okay. So before you created a graphite, pear, or apple, make sure you had a lighting source, gradually shaded from light to dark, made sure you had a cast shadow. The background is optional. In class, I did have students create a table and have a background versus the table, but I'll leave that as optional for your graphite. Now, for Andy Warhol's work, inspired work, which is a pop artist, a movement that happened in the 1960s, we do want to create sort of a space that surrounds it. Once again, the table will be optional if you wanted to create 3 different colors, but I would at least create 2 different colors in your background. So have the apple or the pear be one color, and then the background be a different color. So this is the apple example. You can use whatever color your heart desires. It's just the main thing you're focusing on with this is contrast. So opposites. You could use complementary colors like yellow versus purple or red versus green or warm versus cool. But you want to just make sure that you do not use the same color side by side. So it needs to pop. It needs to have contrast. Instead of doing 6 different examples, we're just going to do 4. All right, so if you decide to go with this as your second choice, then you will need to cut your paper in half. So you've already folded it in half. I have a previous demo on here, but you already folded it in half. So you have one side for your graphite, and then the second side is for your second choice. Remember, those options are post-impressionism, and I've already recorded some other videos. This is post-impressionism. You got cubism, and then now we're going to focus on pop art. But you just need to turn in 2 different examples. One has to be graphite, so this, and then the second one is you pick from those 3 choices. So for my second piece, if I decide to go with pop art, I need to take that second half, cut it some form or fashion, and then I need to fold this into 4ths. So I'll fold it in half, then I'll fold it in half again, but I need to fold it into 4ths because I'm going to have 4 different sections, okay? So one thing that I teach my students is how to make a template. So to repeat that shape over and over again, then we need to make a template. Now for your template shape, you want to make sure it's at least 2 inches tall, and if you have an apple, 2 inches wide. So we want to do that because we just want to make sure that it takes up the majority of space in that composition. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and draw on top of the lines that we created by the folds. So I'm going to split my paper down in half down the middle, and then I'm going to split it in half horizontally. Now I'm ready to start tracing my pear. Now, before I traced my pear, I took some scrap paper, I used my ruler, I measured out at least 2 inches, and then within that space, I drew a pear. And see, I attempted several sizes before I decided, okay, this will definitely be big enough. In class, I provided the templates for this size, but you're at home now, so you're gonna have to get a little more crafty. Okay, so once I have my template, I made sure it was 2 inches. You cut it out, and then you're ready to trace. So I want to make sure I hold it steady, and then I trace all the way around, and I continue to draw that pear in each space, making sure that I hit about the same space for each one. So continue to trace all the way around. Okay, so once I have all of them traced, I could make a table if I wanted to. Oh, I keep missing that side. I could make a table if I wanted to. I could draw a line behind it. I could draw a diagonal line, the same thing for each one, just like these students did. Or I could just leave the background just one simple color. That's up to you. For our cast shadow, we're going to make sure we have a cast shadow. So that's that shadow that my object makes on the surface that it's sitting on. And then, let's just pretend that I finished making the other two as well. I just want to keep the demo really short. Okay, so once I map it all out and I have all of my examples, I finished the bottom, I added my cast shadow, now I can have fun with some color. I'm going to show you some examples that you could use. I would recommend only using marker or colored pencil. You could use crayon, but it might get a little messy, but you could use crayon. I would not use oil pastel for this because oil pastel smears too much. So if I was using marker, a great tip about marker, I can outline first, go all the way around, outline, outline, outline. And then I use my marker nice and flat. So notice I'm not going in and scribbling, but I'm just using a nice flat approach. And I'm just smoothly filling in those lines. Okay, so smoothly fill it in. I'm not trying to scribble. I'm trying to have good craftsmanship and take my time to fill in that space. And one cool thing about pop art, it does not have to be natural at all. You can have a blue pear, you can have a green pear, you can have a purple pear, an orange pear, whatever you decide to do. Just remember that we're trying to create contrast. So if I did that for my pear, then I need to choose an opposite color for the background. How about I'll stick with kind of some complementary colors, warm versus cool colors. So once again, I'm going to lightly go around, just making sure I stay nice and neat. And the paper I'm working with, this is not sketch paper, this is printing paper. So it does bleed a little bit. Your sketch paper probably won't bleed as much. And so just like before, I'm just going to really take my time and make sure I fill up that space, making sure I keep it nice and neat. And like I said, it's optional if you wanted to add a table. So you could just add a table and do the background one color. You could do the table a different color. And then for the cast shadow, I'm going to leave that up to you, whether you want to keep it really interesting and pop art, where you make the cast shadow a different color. Or one option I gave students was use the gray marker to do the cast shadow. You could use black. You could use a darker marker. I'll leave that up to you, what you want to use for the color for your cast shadow. So I just continue just making large, smooth marks. And we will have a little bit of texture with marker, unless you're working with Prismacolor markers, which is usually what Crayola markers do. So I just like to kind of keep it nice and neat to fill in those spaces. And then the last step is outlining. So outlining using a black marker. So a neutral color. And I'm not so concerned about the edge because I am going to go over that edge with a marker. So like I said, you can choose what color you want to use for your cast shadow, whether that be black, whether that be gray, whether that be a fun, wonky color. That's not the black marker I'm looking for. I'm looking for this one. Okay. I was looking for one with a larger felt tip. Okay. So I can keep it very graphic and make harsh lines, very bold lines with graphic art. Then I want to make sure that I outline my pear and clean up all that craftsmanship. And I can go ahead and add a little stem as well. Okay, so that's if you wanted to use marker pop-up approach. Like I said, you could do like what I had students do in class, where we'd use 3 different colors in that space, and then are consistent with our cast shadow, or you can switch it up with your cast shadow. You could also do this with color pencil. It's just with color pencils, same thing. You just want to make sure you put a nice flat color. You're not worried about a gradation, so pressing down hard and making sure your color is nice and flat. You could use crayon, etc. It'd be a little tricky to do this with graphite, but preferably using color with this approach. Okay. All right. So that's the pop art one. Once again, some examples here using multiple colors. Have fun with it. You only have to choose one extra example. So we're all doing the graphic approach, and then it's up to you whether you go with post-impressionism, cubism, or pop art. All right, happy coloring, have fun. Hit me up if you have any questions or concerns.